Hey guys, Josh here. Just wanted to go over just a few things that have been dear to my heart lately, and just some things that I've been seeing lately in a lot of industries that are similar to arboriculture, and pretty much anything that involves using a harness and some type of safety system. Mainly painters, arborists like us. Um, there's rappel guides and just a bunch of other people and other things out there that use similar harnesses and similar basic knots and ropes and ideas like that. So just making this video as a reminder. I'm sure a lot of you guys already know that gear inspection is very important, and I take it very seriously. And I think it's vital that if we are going to trust our lives to pieces of hardware, um, every morning before we go up into a tree that we check it. Especially if you use, for example, aluminum carabiners. Um, you do not want to drop any of these aluminum carabiners. Aluminum is a different, of course, it's a different alloy, it's a different metal than steel. So because of the way aluminum is, if you were to drop this carabiner, this is an aluminum pair carabiner, if you were to drop this on the ground, um, if the shock is substantial enough and it hits it in the right place, for instance, this one's been dropped a few times. I no longer use this for climbing. Um, it could start creating hairline cracks and hairline fractures in the material. And you may not be able to see it on the outside here, and it may be your carabiner happens to be painted chrome. There could be hairline cracks on the inside of this material, and you won't know because it's underneath the paint. Um, and you don't want to be 100 feet up in a tree and have your carabiner break on you and be shit out of luck. So also another thing is, with any carabiner, inspect your gates. You see there's some sharp edges here. You see how this carabiner's, I don't know if you can pick that up on camera. It's kind of bent right here in that portion. It's kind of pushed out a little bit. You definitely do not want to be using that anymore for climbing because it has been compromised. You want to keep this stuff absolutely clean. So here's a new aluminum carabiner. Again, this one surface is smooth, has not been dropped. There's no sharp spots on the gates. Everything is nice, and also the action is smooth. It opens and closes with some tension. It's difficult to open and close it just like that. But carabiners should snap shut freely. You should be able to just let it go, and it should be able to just close and lock by itself. These are double action Petzl carabiners. All right, so moving on. A lot of you that do rappelling in your industry, whether it be arbor care, whether it be canyoneering guides, tour guides, whatever have you, a lot of you are familiar with a device like this. Okay, this is a Petzl ID. This will take ropes up to, I believe this one is 7/16, yeah, 11.5 to 13 millimeter. So this will take a half-inch rope. One thing I want to point out is a lot of people will trust this as being their only rappel device. That may or may not be okay with you. You may want to back it up with something. It is a mechanical device. It's not a hitch we're talking about here. So, but again, these Petzl devices are made out of aluminum, and it is always good to inspect the cam. This is the cam portion. You can see this part. This is the part that actually moves, and this locks down on the rope. So depending on the handle position, it'll move it. It's always good to inspect that because your rope, you figure if you're rappelling, 50, 100 feet, and you may not necessarily have to be zinging out of a tree or zinging down a wall or a cliff or, a stream bed or whatever, that cam is going to generate a lot of heat. And we know that aluminum will dissipate heat a lot quicker than steel, and aluminum doesn't stay hot for as long as steel does. Steel tends to absorb heat, whereas aluminum will absorb a little bit and then it'll cool down fairly quickly because it's a lighter alloy. So because the metal has less mass to it, it's not going to have the storage capacity as, say, aluminum, which is a lighter alloy and will dissipate heat quicker. But so anyway, back to what I'm saying. That heat cycles a lot. Depending on how long that you've had this device, this will heat cycle a lot. And if you know anything about metal, if you heat cycle metal continuously over and over and over and over and over, what ends up happening is that the spots that come into contact with that high heat become brittle. It's kind of just like how they temper your kitchen knives. Okay, so really cheap knives are flimsy, they bend, they don't hold an edge very well, and partially that's because they're not tempered. A lot of these pieces here are tempered steel, or they're tempered aluminum, which means they heat cycle it. And it's heat cycled a few times just to get hardened, not enough to overdo it and make it brittle, but like for instance kitchen knives, they'll heat cycle it maybe once or twice just to keep it from being a flimsy bendable steel, so that way it stays rigid and it holds a sharp edge. So that's something I wanted to mention about these locking cam devices. Make sure you inspect those because, again, those go through a lot of heat cycling. And, when metal gets weak, it does all kinds of weird things. It could chip and flake and crack. And next thing you know, you're rappelling down a 100-foot cliff face and, your rope starts doing one of those little spiral thingies where it starts ripping strands off the core. And you don't want to be looking down and have 50 more feet to go and, candy cane your rope. So anyway, that's something to keep in mind. Moving on. A lot of you probably either own or use one of these on a daily basis. I know SRT is a really big thing in tree industry, and we're trying to phase out double rope technique for the most part because the mechanical advantages that SRT has to offer. So never ever, and I know a lot of climber trainers, or if you have had climbing training or you've done some research and reading and educated yourself, oftentimes you're told never to trust your life 100% to an ascender. I personally don't. If I'm in a situation where an ascender is going to be my only attachment point to the rope, I will back it up with a friction hitch. I'll use a prusik of some sort or another. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about too is that this cam is almost always aluminum. I've never seen a steel handled ascender. I'm sure there are some that exist out there. But again, these have little teeth in here, okay, and those teeth are what grip the rope. Some have smooth cams, which, if you take a fall, which usually in the tree care industry we don't fall, usually our slack is taken out. But say there's a shock load or something on our tying point, cams like this will bite onto the rope and potentially shear the core off depending on the fall factor, whereas smooth cams may glaze the rope as it slides down before it finally slows to a stop. Always inspect those cams. Make sure that those teeth are in good order and they're not going to be grabbing the fibers of your rope and potentially plucking them, compromising the rope. Take a look at this channel and make sure no rocks and grit and debris has gotten inside of here where it could, again, with the other ascender, candy cane your rope and start shredding it to pieces. So, and make sure that there's no cracks along the frame or anything like that. I mean, these are typically aluminum, so try not to throw these. And I want to give you an example of a retired friction hitch here. I don't use this one anymore, but some of you might say, oh, that looks perfectly fine. There's just a few little nicks and cuts and whatever, good to go. Well, the thing is that you got to understand these friction hitches have a certain shelf life. I've used this friction hitch consistently for about, I'd say about 6 months now, and thousands of trees. So it comes down to heat cycling. These are usually heat-resistant fibers, Kevlar, tech fiber, things like that. and you'll notice that a lot of these cords will start to glaze and they get kind of bitey and your hitches stop kind of working. It's usually a good time to retire your ropes, after you start getting a lot of wear on the outer cover and things like that. Typically these, depending on what hitch fiber it is, the strength usually comes from the core. But a lot of, like for instance, this is HRC Prusik, and a lot of the strength is shared between the core and the cover. So again, inspect your friction hitches. It should be a daily habit for you to inspect these things before you trust your life to it in the tree. So this is retired. Another thing. Okay, moving on to your climbing helmet here. Okay, so this is the #1 protection between your head and a piece of rigging, whether it be a block that snaps free, or you compromise your tie-in point, comes crashing down on you. Groundies suck at lowering wood, and they don't let a piece run and ends up locking up and it swings back in your face. This is going to protect your head. This is going to keep you from getting knocked unconscious inside of the tree. It may hurt if you get hit by it, but at least it'll stop your skull from cracking open. So this plastic, typically, it's very similar to PVC pipe. It's a very bendable, rigid plastic. It holds up its shape, but it's rigid, but it's also flexible. It gives. Something you want to check daily basis. Again, you never know. You could take a bump one day and develop, a little hairline crack or something on your helmet, and put it on and get bumped again the next day, and it cracks free, and it ends up puncturing your head, or you get a slice, or whatever happens. So make sure you inspect that. Make sure it fits okay. You definitely want to do the squeeze test. You want to squeeze it together and make sure it pops right back without cracking. Okay, so that's something you want to do as well. Another big thing I see neglected amongst arborists, and again, bear with me. I'm sorry if I'm boring you here. Just sharing, stuff that's been on my heart lately. Inspect your rope bridges, guys. I know it's hard. I know we wake up at 5:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, and we get our coffee. We're out the door. We're on the job site by 8. We're working 8, 10-hour days, and it's a pain in the ass. I know. I understand. Some of us don't want to take those steps and just want to work and whatever. But really important things like your rope bridge, for instance. This is the only thing that when you're ascending and descending, it is the only thing that is holding you onto your rope system. And if you fall because this rope bridge breaks, I am really, really sorry for you, and I really hope that you would have watched this video. Highly important, especially if you're running a double braid rope bridge like this. These can collect dirt and all kinds of little pieces of rocks and things like that, so really important that you inspect it. Flex it, every part of the bridge. You want to kind of just grab it from one end. You kind of want to just flex it like this. And if you feel any bumps, stop, replace that bridge. That core could be, and then there's no way to tell what's inside. You can't really look inside underneath the cover. So if you feel anything that feels suspicious to you, it's better to just spend $10 and replace your rope bridge than to try to chance it and think, oh, it's just maybe a little bunched up fibers or something, it'll be okay. Because again, that's the last thing you want when you're 50 feet in the air. Have your rope bridge break and your lanyard attachment be the only thing holding you to the tree, if you're lucky and you're double tied in. So again, inspect that. Also inspect your aluminum bridge ring if you do run aluminum, whether aluminum or steel. I mean, just check it for cracks. Make sure that it's not compromised. Check your plates if you do have leg attachments, rigging plates. Check your side D-rings. Make sure you're not getting any cracks here, any major dents or bumps or anything like that. And I think it's always good, if you are going to be working at height, it's carrying too much gear, yeah, pain in the ass, but everybody needs to have one of these. I personally prefer the one with the ears. I know a lot of people run the smaller 8s without the ears because it's lighter, more compact, Um, when you're in an emergency situation and you need to get down and your adrenaline is pumping, okay, and I've been there, and you have to get out in a hurry, that adrenaline is going to cloud your thought process. You're going to be thinking pretty quickly, and you're not going to be giving yourself enough time to think out your choices and decisions while you make them. You're just like, I know I need to get down, I need to go as quick as possible and get out of here. Um, and so what can happen is if you set up your 8 and you're not watching things, that rope could rise up over and it could girth hitch up here, and then you're stuck mid-descent. And it's hard to rescue somebody when they're girth hitched to a figure 8, and that's all that's holding them to the rope, and they're stuck. Because then rescue climber has to set another line in the tree, rappel to exactly where you're at, and lift you off your system, and it's a whole difficult process. So anyway, carry one of these. If you want to do the ones without the 8, fine. I mean, do the ones without the ears, that's fine. But I prefer it because I know in the stress situation that's going to prevent my rope from climbing over and girth hitching. So, lastly, definitely inspect your lanyard. These are double action clips. You have to push the gate here, swing that open. Okay. If you tie your own lanyards like I do, because I save money, I don't buy them spliced. I just do a fisherman's knot, and I buy like 50 feet of this stuff at one time, and lanyards get really covered in sap because we have a lot of cooked pine trees out here in Hawaii, and you just do one removal, and your lanyard is just covered in pine pitch, and this stuff dries like Elmer's glue. So um, I know a lot of you guys are probably like, why isn't he getting this stuff spliced? Well, that's why, because I'm replacing my ropes a lot. Um, is it necessary to replace your rope if you get pine pitch on it, especially a lanyard like this? No, probably not. Is it going to make your life a lot more difficult when your friction hitch slides on that pine pitch? Yeah, it is. It's going to be a pain in the ass, and it's probably going to take a couple of times and heat cycle that hitch across that the pine sap, before it finally melts off. You can sit there, if you're determined, you can sit there and you can scrub it for a couple of hours and try to get it to come off. But I throw it away. I just replace it. It's worth it if you're bidding your jobs properly. You're bidding for gear damage and things like that. So anyway, replace that. Um, Definitely check your knots. If you tie on your own hitches, check your knots. It's not too much time before I do all this again when I put on my saddle. I don't check it when I'm at the truck. I do it all kind of one fluid motion. I put on my saddle. I'll turn my bridge over. I'll check it. I'll make sure there's no weird feelings there. Um, I'll check my lanyard. As I'm pulling all my gear out, my lanyard's always attached to my harness, so I'm checking that. I run through all that. Any other bits of gear or item that I know I'm going to need for the day while I go up in the tree, I check it, and I make sure that it's in working functional order. So that's pretty much it and what I wanted to share. If you guys want to add any more safety tips as far as climber gear and gear inspection and things like that, please put it in comments below. And yeah, I hope to hear from you guys, and thanks for watching.